welcome back to Rogue Startups. I'm your host, Craig Hewitt. Today, we're talking about sales. Everyone's favorite thing to talk about. And if it's not already, by the end of this episode, it's going to be serious. It's awesome. I'm chatting with Peter Ahn. And Peter and I have known each other for a while. Sales guy at heart, really technical, works with technical founders all the time to help them improve their sales game. And in this episode, it's really a bridge for me to talk about LinkedIn. We talk about LinkedIn. This is the last episode of our LinkedIn series, and we talk a lot about it. And Peter drops some amazing knowledge towards the end of the episode. So please stick around to the end, because the end of the episode is really where the meat is. But to understand the lens through which you're seeing that, you got to understand where Peter comes from in his experience at some of the finest kind of organizations in the world, right? Dropbox, Slack, right? These big companies that are amazing at selling to the enterprise. And so I think as the only person in this series who really speaks to selling to enterprise with LinkedIn, Peter is very uniquely qualified. And so I hope you enjoy this conversation with Peter. Please stick around to the end. He drops some amazing knowledge about specifically how you can bridge the gap from just creating content and kind of fussing around with LinkedIn to driving actual leads and engaging with them, moving them on to the next step in the sales process. He does it really, really like genuinely and authentically, and I'm about to go steal it. So I hope you do too. I want to start by asking what might be like a really obvious question, but like, why do you think so many technical founders are scared of sales?
Great question. I think it comes down to the fact that they just haven't done it before. I think sales, you need a lot of repetition. It's a confidence game, I think. To have the right mentality is the most important thing in sales. And I think technical founders, typically when they're starting companies, they pour a lot of resources and time into reading literature on the web, but they haven't actually executed on the sale. So I think that's part of the reason why folks are very timid and it's really hard. The other thing too is kind of what I just mentioned. There's so much out there on sales that is misleading. And there's a lot of stereotypes.
Outdated? You can say that.
Exactly. Outdated. A lot of stereotypes about sales itself and the salespeople themselves. That's a lot about like boiler room type situations or, specific how do I say this in a very PC way? It's been very
Wolf of Wall Street kind of guy.
Yeah, exactly. Wolf of Wall Street type image is seared into people's brains. Right? And I think a lot of technical founders haven't grown up in that environment and don't want to become that stereotype. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of nerves around how do you actually absorb the profession without changing your personality or your values?
Cool. So I don't know if I'll have given this background in the intro, but you and I know each other because you were a client of mine and you did a podcast about, it's called Decoding Sales. I still remember because the title is so amazing. It's like perfectly describes the people that you're talking to. Yep. But you help typically like technical founders of startups do better in sales, right?
Exactly. Yep. So whether, they're usually a lot of engineering backgrounds, product backgrounds, sometimes even folks who are in operations or partnerships, but haven't done the sales role specifically.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, that's kind of my jam and my background. I help some folks do better in sales and go to market too. And what I find, and I'd love to hear your experience with this, is that at some point there's this switch that flips and something happens and they're like, holy shit, this sales stuff is like legit. And it really is a great way to grow a business, as opposed to like the other camp, which I think is like build an amazing product and viral loops and blah, 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 which like, I'll say is a form of procrastination, which is the very kind way of putting it.
Way to put it, actually. Yeah. You're avoiding the inevitable, which is you have to position your product, right? Yeah.
Or the optimal, maybe like you're avoiding the inevitable or optimal because it's uncomfortable, like you said at the very beginning.
Yeah.
What do you think is that triggers that switch to flip in people to see kind of the light, as it were?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think it comes when you. Okay, let me answer this in this way, because you mentioned we met through Castos, and I almost forgot that, but I remember that experience as being very authentic because I didn't feel like I was being sold. And in fact, I reached out to you because I felt like you were a thought leader in what you did. I actually wasn't sure if I was going to buy anything from you, but I was looking to pump you for information. So I don't
Totally
know if you
fair.
remember the
Yeah.
conversation. This was probably like, wow, like probably like 3, 4, 5, maybe like 4 years ago, even. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But I was even asking you, like, hey, what do you think about the concept of the show? It wasn't even like, how do I grow the show? It was more like I was so green in podcasting itself. I was just wanting to learn from somebody who knew their craft. And so, to answer your question, I think the power comes when you realize you have knowledge that folks don't consider to be, when you have knowledge that folks consider to be novel, but you consider to be unconscious. I think that's when the power in sales starts coming into play. And it's how I started my coaching business too. I had a ton of organic coffee chats or chats over beer. And I think the power came when I realized, okay, my advice actually is unique. It's unique to the folks that I'm selling to or potentially could sell to. It might not be unique to me. It might seem so basic to me, but me just talking over a beer is giving folks a lot of business impact. And so I started to realize the power of that when my clientele started telling me what my advice was actually impacting. So organically, they'd be like, hey, you know that coffee chat we had in San Francisco? That actually helped me close my first 6-figure deal. And then you start to realize, okay, maybe I'm undercharging because I should get more than a free latte.
Yeah.
Or like, I love vodka
Yeah.
sodas, but like, even getting 3 free vodka sodas doesn't seem enough if people are telling me, wow, I'm actually now confident in closing 6-figure deals. And so I think that's where the switch was. It was kind of, I think, over a period of time. It wasn't like this one aha moment. It was a series of clients telling me, this is what you actually helped me do. And I talk about the metrics around deals, but oftentimes it's also just about mentality. People just telling me, you actually make me feel better about myself on a sales call. Emotionally, you actually have like taught me how to communicate and have high EQ. And I think that's really where kind of the power came. So I guess I'm going to turn the question on you too, because I don't know if you felt that interaction when we met was authentic as it actually came across as, or if you were like constantly thinking while I was asking you a question, okay, like I got to actually sell this guy because he's asking me for a lot of things that, if we just end this call and he doesn't sign up to Castos, then I'll be regretful, like I'm curious like what your mindset was on that call. And I know you have thousands of these, so it might be hard to remember me specifically, but yeah.
No, so I don't remember our call specifically.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you're honest. But you remember the podcast name, which is, I'll take that.
Yeah. But I'll just share how I approach selling our Castos production services, because I think it's probably a lot like how a lot of people just in general, our audience and yours, approach selling is, we have a widget. Sorry, I have a hacky sack that's like my fidget spinner. So we have a widget that's this hacky sack, right? Yeah. And it's the same hacky sack as you sell and as Bob and Susie down the street sell. Like largely the shit that we all do is the same. And you can say, oh, well, I have a widget that's shinier, better, faster, whatever. Like that's fine. But the reality is, nobody's buying that shiny button or that slightly faster web page. They're buying like, I gotta decide on a vendor for this thing or I'm going to get fired. Right. And my CEO said, we got to start a podcast and it's got to be good. I'm going to go with the person who gives me the best chance of not getting my ass in the ringer over this stuff. And so the way I approach sales is just me. Like I'm selling me way more than anything else, especially for a professional service, because like that's all that matters, right? Is that they like me and they trust me. And I say, hey, if you like and trust me, you believe that what I said is true about us creating a good podcast for you. Yeah. That's my sales strategy. And I think you can translate that into your CRM or your new AI tool or whatever, especially as it gets to like fundraising or whatever, because like in those instances, like you got your metrics, sure, and hey, we've done this and our TAM is that and blah, 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 blah. But like every single investor out there is betting on you, not your business.
Totally.
especially early on.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I think the other component of that too is, I talked about in the beginning of the show a little bit about confidence and mentality training. I think it's also how does the other person, the seller, make you feel as a buyer? Because I think in
Mm,
today's modern day and age, and I think that's something you did really well. You made me feel like I could do this podcast and that it could become big. You gave me that confidence.
yeah.
If I were to talk to you and it felt like podcasting was just like this insurmountable mountain because there's so many podcasters out there, then I probably never would have gotten started. Right. And I
Yeah.
think that's what I do as a sales coach too. It's like, hey, you can actually do this. I don't care if you've never sold a 6-figure deal. I think you have superpowers that you don't know about as a founder, and you have a very unique story being a technical founder where a lot of buyers will give you their money just because you have a unique brain and perspective. And it's now incorporated into this game changing generational product. And then, like what happens there is people are like, wow, I've talked to so many go to market coaches who make me feel like the other. But here's Peter who
Yeah.
makes me feel like I can actually do this with him and eventually without him. Right. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, totally. So I saw a thing the other day. Someone was saying like the biggest leverage you can have in your business is just showing up tomorrow.
mm-hmm.
Right. Like, and I
Yeah.
think that's a big part of it is like, it's fucking hard. Like all this stuff's really hard. And if you can have the mentality and the internal and external environment to just show up and get like a little bit better every day,
Yeah.
you're going to crush it. Like, and that's so much, and that's sales, and that's being a founder, and that's fucking LinkedIn and YouTube and team and all that kind of stuff. Like,
Yes.
it's so that longevity is so underrated, I think.
Yeah. There's no overnight success story. Right.
Yeah.
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 Completely agree.
Cool. Okay, so I want to have a little therapy session about
Nice.
coaching because yeah, so currently Castos is like, 75% of my time, about 25% of my time is spent either I'm an advisor to Tiny Seed, the accelerator program that we were part of. So like I help a whole bunch of, there's like 200 companies in there. So I help a whole bunch of them.
Nice.
And then I have a handful of clients on the side that I coach one-on-one. You have a much larger but similar kind of program and coaching setup where you help founders get better at sales, right?
Yes. Yep.
How did you come to, aside from you were helping your friends and they bought you coffees and stuff, like
Yeah.
how did you come to say like, I'm going all in. This is a big deal. Like this is my whole bit for now. Like what did that evolution look like?
Yeah, I think evolution is the right term because I first went into coaching like in 2016 actually. So this was about 8 years ago. And back then I knew my passion was an early stage, but I had never taken a company from zero to something. Like my background is I was at Google when there were 40,000 employees. I sold a television commercial product that was an experimental startup within a large company, but it was still with the resources of Google. Dropbox was about 90 people when I joined, and they didn't have an enterprise product, but they still had over 50 million users, right? And millions of dollars of revenue coming from their consumer brand. So enterprise was still an experiment that had some tailwinds. And Slack, similar story, right? They were 300 people when I joined, and I closed their first enterprise deals, but they still had this product-led growth motion where they did have a good, healthy base that I could work off of. So just to kind of get to the point of your question, like in 2016, I still had a lot of these large brands, but I couldn't go to a founder and say, I know what you're doing. Like kind of like you have that credibility because you've actually been a founder going from zero. So the flip for me was I joined Twingate, which was a cybersecurity company that had no customers when I first started advising them. And I decided, let me actually fully dive in to see if I can build the sales, customer success, and partnerships function, not as a CEO, but at least as the person who's responsible for $0 in revenue and trying to get to millions. And because I had success in doing that, I was like, okay, now I can actually go to a founder and say, I know how you feel. I've been in not your shoes, but I've been in the shoes of where your company is right now.
Yep.
And that gave me a ton of confidence to say, let's make a business out of this because I already know I have the organic interest in terms of advice. Now I have like the hard experience of being able to build from scratch. And the marriage of the two, I think, really allowed me to say, okay, I could do this for the long term without feeling any sort of imposter syndrome gaps on my side.
Man, that last part is everything, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have so much imposter syndrome. I have so within Castos and on the coaching side, and I shouldn't either way. I mean, Castos were kind of millions of dollars a year in
Yeah.
revenue. I've been doing this for almost 10 years now. I've kind of done and seen it all. And every single time I go into a coaching call, I'm like, man, I could screw this up. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, totally.
I'm a
And it's
fraud. I'm a
probably what
failure.
it makes you good, right? I feel the same way. I get nervous
Yeah.
before coaching calls too, because I want to maintain the reputation people came to me with.
Yeah.
And with AI, right? Like Dropbox feels like such a like ancient company now, unfortunately, because it was founded in like 2007, right? And so I think for coaches, it's really important to stay on top of the modern trends as well, and to make sure you convey, hey, like it's not one size fits all. My data points are stories from the past, and my superpower is not telling you exactly what to do, but it's to think through how you might approach situations and give you the confidence that you can use my stories to accelerate learning. But I'm never going to give you like the full answer every single day, right?
Yeah. 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 I think the recency of your experience is really important. It's something I say a lot. Is like, hey, yeah, I'm a founder,
Yeah.
and so I literally have been in your shoes, uh, and I know, like I've been, I can help you, and whether you're a founder, or you're employee number one or whatever, like it's
Yeah.
it's kind of all the same. But I also did it in the last few years, not
Yes.
fucking 25 years ago, like some of these, I would say gray hairs, but I got, I got a fair bit, but, I do think that's important. And that's actually it's one of the things I'm most apprehensive of kind of like, there'll be a time when this is like what I do as
Mm.
is coaching.
Yes.
And when
Yes.
I lose that context of, I'm in my CRM every day and I'm in marketing automation software for my real business. Like, at what point will someone say something to me and I go, what? I've never heard of that thing, or whatever. I don't know. Does that concern you that time will come, or are there things that you do where you're like, yo, I'm good.
Yeah.
I got this covered.
No, that concerns me every day, actually,
Okay.
because I never want to be the dinosaur in the room, right?
Yeah.
And it is also like how I sell myself too. If you notice my LinkedIn banner, I clearly lay out like new school sales thoughts, right? But then if I'm in the industry for 20, 30 years, I'm not new school anymore, right? So
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
something that creeps into my mind. Like, am I going to have to change my marketing message and then start to say I'm like, the old school guy who still can make things work? I don't know. But to answer your question, like how do I address it, right? Because it's not just something I'm anxious about. I do intentionally work through specific scenarios with my customers. So I'll give you an example. I love getting super tactical with customers, right? Like I make sure that's part of my sales coaching. I never like to give frameworks and have the CEOs go off on their own and execute it on their own. Like we actually have sessions where we're looking at an email for 15 minutes and dissecting it and going through the back and forth of the email. And then, as much as possible in real time, if I help a CEO craft an authentic email, I want to know what the response is and I want to be able to react to that response together with them. So I think that's a good way to kind of be like a co-pilot to your clients and make them feel the power of not only your strategy, but the tactical, tangible nature of how your strategy turns into results. So that's like a very specific example. I do that with tools as well. If I hear about a new CRM, I hear a lot of people talk about ADIO, ATTIO. I grew up on like Salesforce and maybe some HubSpot and Airtable a
Yeah.
little bit. If you're like very very early stage, but never used ADIO or heard of it. And so my response to that isn't like you should use Salesforce because that's what I know. It's let's actually unpack that together. And I might even sign up for a trial and explore it myself because I'm curious. So I think that
Yeah.
helps a little bit where you're actually in the weeds of leveraging the tools and the tactics so that you make sure there's tangible results at the other end of it versus just saying like, hey, I'm a storyteller and you could take and leave whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then the other side,
I think,
actually, sorry, because that's one side of
go
it.
for it.
The other side of it is that frameworks and kind of mentality, I think, don't change that much, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Right? Like, if I'm looking like 20 years out, the mentality at which I approach sales, I think I'm pretty confident it's still going to be effective because I'm all about being brutally transparent, honest, confident in your gaps to make sure you can close a big deal. And I think those are very like psychological human tendencies that help close enterprise deals that are also hard to overcome, because a lot of people think you have to sell something that's not there to keep engagement, but that's just like completely not true in my experience. And so I think marrying that like strategic mentality and unique kind of approach to adopting a mentality that's undeniably successful, like that married with, okay, staying fresh with the tactical day to day, I think is a killer combination, or at least I hope it is in the way that I'm trying to execute my business.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Makes sense.
Well, is that, yeah, does that jive with you? Is that how you deal with like, how are you dealing with imposter syndrome actually?
Yeah, I think part of it is I'm definitely just figuring it out as I go. And that's part of the kind of pitch and disclaimer is, yo, this is not my full-time deal. I only will ever have 12 clients while I'm running Castas because that's kind of my deal with myself and, our investors and stuff is this is just a side thing. It's a few hours a week. Mm-hmm. And I'm in the weeds every day figuring this out. So I know like one of the things that I bring value in is that like I'm literally in sales calls and running sales process. And so like I kind of overcome imposter syndrome just by being busy and in it. I think I will have much more the day that this becomes kind of like my only thing. So I'm deferring it, I guess, for now is part of it. But I think what I was thinking about as you were wrapping that up is I think there's an aspect to kind of like staying hungry and like wearing the skinny jeans and all this kind of like, right? Like,
yeah,
I gotta keep myself moving.
Yes.
No matter what, like whether I'm kind of doing this as a side deal or full time or Castos or whatever, like I gotta, and maybe it's more applicable in my time at Castos where I've been podcasting for 10 years. This will be episode 321 or something.
That's impressive.
And like
That's
when I get on the phone to talk to people about podcasting, I can go, well, fuck, back in my day, we were using Skype, literally. We were using Skype, right?
Yeah.
and that makes me sound like an ogre, right? Or I can go, the new, coolness is Riverside and you want a cool light like this in the background to give some depth of color. And we're big on video because that's the new thing and TikTok.
I love your setup, by the way. I could use some consulting.
Thank you. Thank you. Honestly, the light makes a huge difference. Like it looks really boring without the light.
Okay. That's good. I'm gonna have to get from you like what brand and all that.
Yeah. Cool. So I wanna segue a little, and this is gonna be a magic segue if you could, from kind of sales and sales coaching to you are the last member of our LinkedIn series, and I wanted to have you on to talk about sales in LinkedIn because you're obviously like a sales professional. The answer to how can I grow my business to every single one of my clients is LinkedIn, the LinkedIn and YouTube, right? And there's this kind of magic that happens between the two. But well, I guess first, do you think LinkedIn is a viable channel for pretty much every business?
Ooh, great question. I want to say yes, but I'm also probably very biased because I work with B2B clients, right? So like my constituents, you have to be selling into enterprise organizations who are trying to buy your product from their business budget.
Perfect.
And that's perfect for LinkedIn, right? I hesitate because it matters where your watering hole is. I like to use that phrase, right? Where are people talking about their problems? And for businesses, a lot of businesses are starting to talk about their problems on LinkedIn or looking for opportunities to their problems on LinkedIn. Another, I think, channel that's worked for me at Twingate, my prior company, was Reddit, because there were a lot of Reddit threads where people were complaining about VPN, and we happened to have a solution where we could replace VPN. So I think that's the question that founders should ask for themselves when they're looking to invest in a platform, is where are people having conversations about problems you can solve, right?
Yeah.
And then that married with what's a platform that can bolster your personal brand in a way that marries business. Like, that's also really important, because, you know, on Reddit, sure, we had some opportunities to get leads, but Reddit's not really in it to, you know, make unique profiles of users, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's very limited
Yeah.
functionality there. It's literally a forum board. But LinkedIn, I think the reason why it's special is because I've had the opportunity, and a lot of my clients have had the opportunity, to really showcase their personality and values and perspectives beyond a product, which I think is key as well to find in the platform you want to align with when looking at building out a digital footprint.
So I was talking to a prospective client last week who sells quite a B2B solution. And we were talking about, you know, LinkedIn, right? That's the nail. I'm a hammer. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
And they were like, Craig, how am I going to talk about, well, I'll just say, like, VPN solutions and cybersecurity on LinkedIn? Like, it's freaking boring. Nobody cares. I'm going to pull my hair out. How do you, I mean, because I consider myself kind of lucky. Like, I get to talk about either sales and sales coaching, super fun, and applicable to everyone, or podcasting and content creation, super fun, interesting to everybody. If you're a listener to the show and they're like, I sell municipal planning software.
Yeah.
What do you say?
I think the key is being able to actually translate what you do in terms that a broader audience can understand. Because even something for like municipal software, planning software, you said, right? There's going to be multiple stakeholders that need to make a decision on that particular product, I'm guessing. And so at that point, it's not necessarily, okay, how do I sell this to people who know what it is? It's like, how do I actually translate the business value to a broader audience so that the sale becomes easier? And I think that's also like what I'm doing with sales coaching too, and what we did with VPN replacements as well. It's like VPN replacements isn't just relevant for security and engineering teams. The everyday employee should understand why their current VPN sucks so much and why it's actually impeding on productivity. And so I think like these digital platforms, whether it's LinkedIn or something else, is an opportunity for you to up-level your product so it's relevant to the CFO the same way it is to your champion or executive sponsor.
Interesting.
So I think that muscle is really underrated for founders who are starting enterprise sales. They think, okay, well, like, I know the pain points and I know the decision makers. Actually, like, today, the pain points are various regardless of, you know, what product you're solving, and the decision makers are a lot broader and deeper. You know, it's not enough to sell something to one person, because with the economy going up and down, like, purse strings are a lot tighter, I would say.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say. It's like, you need to start building that muscle online to up level your message in a strategic way so that your budget is also strategic for your product.
I'm gonna paraphrase on a tangent, maybe a little bit here. Sure. A big thing I like to talk with folks about in my sales coaching and just content in general is this, like, discovery and agitation phase of a sales call, right? Because it's super important. It's a little bit of what I'm getting from what you're saying is, like, you're definitely not talking like features and benefits. You're not talking like market news, which would be like super high level, like not even problem aware if you're thinking about the customer buyer journey, but kind of like they got a problem and you just want to agitate, or like you want to pour some salt on the wound a little bit. Because what I find is the more, and this is in stark contrast to what we were saying before about being an authentic sales call, the more I can help the customer understand the shit that they're in, the easier it is to sell something.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do that in a very genuine way, but you know, I give the example a lot of like, oh, I want to start a podcast. Why do you want to start a podcast? Well, I want to grow my thought leadership. Cool. Why do you want to grow your thought leadership? Well, I've written a book and I'm going to launch it next month. Okay, cool. Like what happens if that doesn't go well?
Yeah.
Whoa, cool. That's a big problem. And then like me selling my little podcasting solution is really easy relative to that.
Yes.
Then I just want to, be the next big thought leader.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's without pain and without a huge impact, there's no budget, right? So I see content as surfacing that pain and getting people to think about where that pain is, because sometimes you have buyers who are like, oh, I know I have a problem, but then you have buyers who don't know they have a problem. So how are you going to warm them up? And I think in a lot of ways, it's educating them on what happens if you don't work with somebody like me as a sales coach, let's say.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of my posts are about, hey, like I went through this deal, or if you're coming across this problem with you feel like you're at the finish line of a deal, but your deal stalls, what do you do? Right? Then people start thinking, okay, well, I don't have that problem now, but when I do, I remember that post and I'm going to go to reference it, hopefully, in that ideal scenario. Right?
Yeah.
Or I'll talk about a client who didn't want to have sales coaching, but then they worked with me and something happened. So you're incepting, I think, where the pain points are going to be in a future state, so that it's easier for them to reference and find you when they actually do feel like they need to address the pain point that's always been there.
Yeah.
And the other thing too about like, it's municipal planning software, you said, as an example.
Yeah.
Okay, so think about like, do you know Brex and Ramp, these corporate credit card companies?
Yeah. Yep.
So like those founders could have taken a similar lens. They could have been like, who cares about corporate credit cards, right? Or who cares about expense reporting? All of a sudden, Ramp is like one of the hottest brands out there. And what do? Obviously, they're not just a corporate credit card, but they made that world ubiquitous to every single person that they could sell to, top down, right? Brex is a cool company to the CFO, but it's also a cool company to the people who are logging into, or sorry, not Brex, Ramp. My wife works at Ramp. So I'm unconscious, or maybe consciously plugging it, but like that's the kind of thing I think about when founders are like, this might not be relevant to this channel. It's like, no, actually, you have to make it relevant by figuring out the unique advantage you have, where you're the clear winner and the clear like new kids on the block that are fresh and cool in your space.
Yeah. Okay. I think one of the big questions that I have, and I think everyone has, is, okay, cool, I'm putting out content, I'm doing my thing, I'm kind of agitating the pain and like developing the problem a lot. But dude, Peter, like, I ain't got no leads, I ain't closing any deals. Like, what's up, man? Like, how do you coach your clients to bridge that gap? So I think that's the secret with LinkedIn, is like, cool, and I'll just give some context of how I think about it as opposed to cold email, because it's kind of similar.
Sure.
But the difference is you got a whole bunch of chances to make a first impression on LinkedIn.
Yep.
And you got a whole much more context, your profile and your posts and your comments and all this kind of stuff. And somebody can choose to engage with you based on any of those, or on a DM, which is the cold email.
Yeah. Yep.
So like the passive stuff aside, right? Let's just assume we got your content going, and we've talked about that in the series a lot. But then, like, how do you go make business out of this?
Yeah. So right now I'm actually doing this with my own practice, which is I've hired somebody and I've given this person parameters to say, hey, this is my ideal customer. For me, I love folks who are CEOs, founders, less than 2 years in the seat. Hopefully they have some venture funding in a seed round. They also have an engineering or product background. And, they're in the United States, because I want to kind of control my schedule to the States for now. And so this person comes with hundreds of contacts, and you start to kind of develop this list of people you should be reaching out to on LinkedIn. And then right now what I'm doing is I'm connecting with as many of those folks as possible. And I don't even put a message in the connect request, because my goal is, because I have so much content, I want them to look at my profile and be like, why is this person reaching out to me? And when, a portion of those folks will accept, some will be like, why is this guy reaching out? I have no idea who he is. I'm just going to like decline. But some raise their hand and there's signal number one that I've generated. Okay, so a portion of folks have accepted my invite. Then what I do is I research them more deeply. I'll go to their website because now I have the signal to say these folks might be worth my time. There's no way I'm going to be able to research 200 leads a day because it's not worth my time because I'm on coaching calls and I want to make sure my current clients are happy. So anyways, I research the subset that actually accept my invite. And then I reach out with a personalized no. Not anything where it's like, hey, Craig, I see you at a Bachelor of Science at X University and go Bulldogs or whatever. Not anything like that. But oftentimes I'll have mutual connections. So I'll say, hey, Craig, like I noticed we were connected with Lon, who's a venture capitalist at Basis Set. I actually helped a lot of our portfolio companies go from 0 to 1. So I thought I'd reach out. I still don't ask for a meeting, by the way, at this stage. What I say is, since I've helped a lot of companies, I've seen 3 common founder-led sales mistakes that are made, and I created a short deck and a recording on that. Do you want to see it? Right. So I'm not giving anything yet, but I'm like, hey, like I might have something of value, which are 3 mistakes I think you probably shouldn't make if you care about sales and you're doing founder-led sales. And so a portion of those folks respond and they're like, hey, Peter, actually, I'm really interested in seeing that. Again, the goal is for them to even like get more intrigued and be like, okay, this person has something. Let me go to his website. Let me look at more LinkedIn posts maybe. And so I send that artifact or that collateral. And now we're in a very genuine conversation where I'm trying to provide as much value before I say, hey, like, what did you think about that piece of content? And do you want to get on a call with me? And all throughout, I'm asking little questions where it's like, hey, like, it's all about coaching style. Have you thought about a coach before? And then when you get on a call, they've hopefully looked at, 5 to 10 of your LinkedIn posts. Some get on a call, by the way, Craig. Thanks to you for helping me get this Decoding Sales podcast started. Some are like, hey, I've listened to 6 episodes already. And then the conversation is not really, it doesn't feel like a stodgy first sales call. It feels like, okay, we kind of know we want to work together. Let's just figure out the details and let me ask a few more questions that I wasn't able to over the LinkedIn DM series. So that I think is like a really proactive way to get the process started while still having it not feel like the traditional cold outbound. Yeah. So I'm curious how that sounds to you or if that resonates.
Yeah. First, it sounds mostly really authentic. You are doing what LinkedIn is designed for, which is just connecting people. And it's just like you would do if you were at a networking event or a coffee shop or a conference or something like that. So like, I really like it. I'll tell you, and just like transparently, I follow a similar approach.
Nice.
But have fallen short at kind of that last step a little bit, which is, I use some software to automate this, which again, I've said it on the podcast, it's technically against LinkedIn's terms of service. So do it or don't do it. I don't know. To me, it's like an acceptable risk.
Can I
either way,
which platform you use?
I use Dripify.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So Dripify, Extendi or Extenda.
Yeah, or there's like Lemlist. There's like all sorts of these, right? Yeah.
Yep. Achieves the same thing you're talking about, right? I could hire the guy who does it and reaches out to 20 people a day, or just do this. I probably will do the latter when I get a little more sophisticated because I think there's some stuff in there, right? But I pulled the list right from Sales Navigator, and I got a list. I reach out to a whole bunch of people. If they accept it, I wait a couple of days and like no note, right, in the connection request, just like you're saying. I want them to view the profile. If they accept it, I wait a few days and I send them a message, and this message is killing it.
Nice. Yeah. What is it? I'm curious.
It says, Heya, Heya, because I want it to be kind of casual. Heya, first name. Cool to connect. How is growth going these days? I know it's a tough environment for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
And dude, it's
I might have to steal some of that. That tough environment piece hits hard.
Yeah. I mean, because it's like, it's universal, right? Everybody. And then the interesting thing is I get a bunch of people like puffing their chest out and they're like, oh, we're fucking killing it and it's great. And I am so busy. I just need people to keep up with demand. And I'm like, awesome, dude. Like really awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, back to authenticity is like, that's what I would say to you, right? It's like, Peter, dude, how's it going, man? You know, like, what's up? And I think that's where doing this well kind of shines. Is when you just are yourself.
Like I think reaching out to folks is also part of the qualification process too, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be taking a meeting just because. So for those folks who come back to you who are like, it's so amazing, like I'm doing so well, you probably will like have second thoughts on getting on a call with that person, right? Because it might just be a call with them just like showing off how well they're doing, and they probably won't be ready for your help. And so I like that message, because then it self-qualifies for people who are having issues, right? Where you can actually step in and help enable some support around.
Yeah. So, but the last step that you're talking about is where I've fumbled the ball. Like I don't have a thing to do after that.
Got it. Yeah.
So, I'm just going to steal what you did.
I think like also I've read a lot around where people, there's opinions around LinkedIn outreach too. And some people are like, hey, just tell me what you want on the first message. That's like not really like authentically me, because I want people to actually like, I want to create this pull effect versus me trying to force something on their calendar. But then I think there's like a good middle ground too, because you also don't want to keep giving value and not ask for a call. So I feel like I'm in the middle where I want to provide a little bit of value, but I don't want to give free advice forever. Especially if I feel like there's a fit with the folks that I'm reaching out to. And right now I don't do any automation. I might think about doing it because I want them to also see that I'm committing time to like learning about them. And so I'd rather spend, 15 minutes on a single highly qualified lead than 15 minutes on like 10. Right. But I think eventually, hopefully that'll be a good problem to have. If I need to automate, hopefully that means my business is at another level. But right now I'm just kind of doing things that don't scale so I can like learn and make sure I'm conveying like the right authentic energies.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love it how you're kind of giving people a very authentic option to take the next step. I think, and then that's the hard thing, right? We started the conversation talking about like why people suck at sales, and me included, is like it's awkward to go from like, hey dude, how's it going, to you want to go on a date? Like that's kind of what we're saying is like, hey, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
I want to draw this line over here to you being my client. How do you do that in a genuine, authentic, real, not pushy way? And that's just like bridging that gap is challenging, I think. Kudos to you. Yeah.
And the thing that I think about is, and I think you could probably have the same mentality because you provide so much value on that call. Like even if I didn't sign up for Castos, I feel like I would have learned a lot. And that's something I keep in mind for my own practice too. It's like, I at a certain point, if I know the company and the background of the founder, I'm like, I know even in a 30-minute call, I can provide at least one or two nuggets that are going to help their sales. And so that's also the other thing. Like I know I'm going to be providing value, and it's not just a sales pitch on a sales call, right? It's a lot of advice giving too, to continue that same feeling of, okay, I got information from this guy. It's a continuation of continuing to get more information. And so I think the arc of the sales call is more like, 15 minutes of giving value, and then maybe like 10 minutes of you asking for the business.
Yeah. Interesting. I'll tell you what I do these days, and it definitely doesn't scale, but I just like it. I'm like, whatever. So have a 30-minute initial call, discovery call. It's all about them. It's just, hey, what are you going through? Tell me about your process, blah, blah, blah. About 5 minutes before that's over, I go, cool. Like, looks like we could be a good match. Really, the next step is like, I'm going to give you a free coaching call, and it's an hour long. And so this is like your trial, right? Instead of me just telling you what this is like, you get to experience it over here. And so like, I have the time to where I can do this. It doesn't scale, right?
Sure.
But it feels really good to me because I get to spend 25 minutes just understanding what's going on with someone, to where then I can go into that coaching call next week with a ton of context and really help them out.
So I would,
it feels,
can I push you on something? I would experiment with the kind of like give maybe 15 minutes, shorten that discovery a little bit. Give some value, make sure you look really good on that intro call too, which I'm sure you already do just by the way you're asking questions. And then experiment with saying the trial is a paid consulting call.
Okay.
I've had a lot of success with that where I do trials too, but my trials are just paid sessions.
Okay.
And then what I do on the paid session is make sure I'm bringing my full, energy. I try to do that every call, but it's a different kind of environment because you're trying to get the renewal. And then there's inevitably action items there that, they need to follow up on with like a pack of coaching sessions after that first session.
Yeah.
So I would give that a shot. I was talking to my best friend who also was in this similar situation where he's just giving so many advice calls and he's unsure, how do I turn that into paid? And the best way to do that is to set the expectation that after the intro call, anything that you give value after that has to have a price tag on it.
Yeah. Yeah. That is that evolution.
Your time is valuable, Craig. You're a wealth of knowledge.
No, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's that evolution of confidence, I think, is what you're talking about. Is you're kind of 2 steps ahead to where you're like, I don't lace them up for free anymore, right? You gotta pay to see the goods.
Yeah. The other thing too is, it's the impact that you're creating, right? So it seems like you have great questions around what the impact is of not having your support. Then a trial, I don't know how much you would charge, but let's say like hypothetically, you're like, hey, I'm going to charge $500 for the trial session. And they're cagey about it, then you might be like, well, $500 could turn into however much revenue you said you wanted in the beginning of the call, right?
Yeah.
So like if you're trying to get to $1 million in revenue this year, spending $500 on a strategic call doesn't seem like an outsized request.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah,
That's
of
great.
course, of course. Yeah, hopefully that helps. I want to hear.
Time to level up. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to hear how it goes.
Cool. Peter, this is amazing. I think it's a really cool place to wrap. For folks who want to connect with you, LinkedIn sounds like the obvious place.
Yep. LinkedIn would be good. Also, my website, it's peterahn.com, my full name.com. So either
awesome.
place. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Peter, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Craig.